The evening had wrapped the city in a golden haze when I first saw him, a boy standing awkwardly in the grand drawing room of my mistress's mansion. His curious eyes darted from one glittering ornament to another, the chandeliers reflecting in his dark pupils like stars caught in a restless sea. I froze, startled and suspicious. Outsiders were never allowed inside the bungalow without permission. Every servant in that house knew the rule. Yet there he was, standing as if he belonged, his young face half lit by the setting sun filtering through the curtains. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" I asked sharply, my voice echoing across the marble floor. I expected fear or apology, but the boy turned toward me with calm defiance. "Why should I tell you?" he said. "The lady of this house called me herself. I came to meet her." His words, spoken in flawless Urdu, made me pause. He wasn't Arab. His accent was unmistakably Pakistani. Switching from Arabic, I asked, "You're from Pakistan?" He nodded lightly. "My name is Shumail. I came here looking for work. Your mistress said she might have a position for me." There was something unsettling about him, the way he carried himself, the quiet confidence in his voice. He looked barely 16 or 17, but he spoke with the composure of a grown man. I raised an eyebrow. "You seem too young to be looking for a job abroad." He laughed softly, showing a flash of boyish arrogance. "I'm 20. My height and face confuse people despite his explanation. I couldn't shake off my curiosity. What kind of job could my mistress possibly offer him? The mansion already had more workers than it needed. My employer was a wealthy Arab woman known for her strictness and temper. She lived alone, but her household ran like a military operation. Maids, drivers, cooks, gardeners, each one constantly under her cold scrutiny. Before I could ask more, the sound of heels clicking on the marble made me straighten. The mistress entered, tall, elegant, draped in an abaya of deep emerald silk. Her usual expression was sharp and unreadable, but as soon as she saw the boy, something remarkable happened. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Welcome," she said warmly, "man. Please sit." I nearly gasped. I had never seen her smile before, not once in all my years working for her. "Nita," she said, turning to me. "Bring coffee for our guest." I nodded quickly and retreated to the kitchen, my thoughts spinning. When I returned with the tray of Arabic coffee, I stopped at the doorway. She was laughing. Not politely, not socially, but genuinely laughing, her voice rich and musical. The sound filled the room like sunlight. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Placing the tray silently, I left the room, still hearing her laughter behind me. I found Mina, another maid, waiting in the corridor. "You won't believe what I just saw," I whispered. Madam was laughing. Mina's eyes widened. Laughing? Our madam? Then the world must be ending. Neither of us knew that her laughter that evening was not joy. It was the beginning of something far more mysterious. That night, after finishing my chores in the kitchen, I washed my hands, wiped the counter clean, and prepared to lock up for the evening. The rest of the staff had already gone to their quarters, and the mansion was unusually quiet. I always loved that silence. The calm before dawn, when all that remained was the soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant ticking of the clock. But that night, something felt different. As I turned off the kitchen lights, I caught sight of a faint shadow moving across the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I thought it might be one of the guards or perhaps my imagination, but then, as I stepped closer, the figure came into view. It was Shumail, the same young man who had visited earlier that day. "What are you doing here again?" I asked in surprise, keeping my voice low but firm. "You already met Madam this afternoon. Why are you here at this hour?" Before he could reply, a voice echoed from behind me, sharp, commanding, and unmistakably that of my mistress. "Nita," she said, "what is this constant questioning?" "Let him be." I called him. I froze instantly. My mistress rarely raised her voice unless she was angry. She stood at the top of the stairs, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Her words silenced every question that had risen in my throat. "Yes, madam," I murmured, stepping aside. To my unease, Shumail walked past me, his footsteps soft but confident. Without hesitation, he followed her up the stairs, and together they disappeared into her private room. A moment later, the heavy wooden door closed and locked. I stood there for several seconds, staring at the door at the end of the corridor. A strange unease coiled inside me. My mistress, known for her discipline and pride, had just broken one of her own rules. No outsiders were ever allowed upstairs, let alone inside her bedroom. I wanted to leave it alone, but curiosity is a disease of the human heart. As I walked toward the servants' quarters, my thoughts refused to quiet down. Why had she called him again at night? What was their connection? When I entered my small shared room, Nina, my Indian roommate, was sitting cross-legged on her bed, repairing her uniform. She looked up and smiled. "You're late today, Nita." "What kept you?" I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "That boy. The one who came this afternoon. He's back." Madam took him to her room. Nina's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Ah, I told you, these rich Arab women are never lonely. Their husbands travel and their hearts wander." I frowned at her. "Don't speak like that. Madame is not that kind of woman." She laughed lightly. "Believe what you want. But if she keeps calling that boy at night, you'll see what kind she truly is." I turned away, pretending not to care. But deep inside, her words scratched at something fragile within me. The first crack in my faith in the woman I worked for. The next morning, I awoke earlier than usual. The air inside the servants' quarters felt heavy, as though something unseen had settled in during the night. I washed quickly, tied my scarf, and stepped out toward the main house. The marble floors were cool beneath my feet, the corridors quiet except for the distant chirping of birds perched on the balcony railings. But my peace vanished the moment I glanced toward my mistress's room. The door was slightly open, and through it, I saw Shumail stepping out. He looked nothing like the boy who had arrived so full of confidence yesterday. His shirt clung to his skin, his face pale and drawn. He moved slowly, almost limping, as though his body carried an invisible burden. I froze, my hands tightening around the broom I was holding. He didn't even glance at me. He simply lowered his head and walked out of the mansion. Before I could make sense of what I had seen, Nina appeared beside me with a sly smile. "I told you," she whispered, "our madam is not as holy as you think." "Stop it, Nina," I said sharply. You're making things up." She folded her arms. "Making things up?" You saw his face. He looked half dead. "What do you think happens when a young boy spends the whole night in a woman's room?" Her tone made my stomach tighten. "That's enough," I said, turning away. But her words followed me like echoes in my mind. The rest of the day dragged on in uneasy silence. The mistress didn't mention the boy at all. She carried herself as she always did, calm, elegant, distant, as though nothing unusual had happened. Yet every time I looked at her, I couldn't forget that image of Shumail leaving her room, drained and trembling. By afternoon, the whispers had already begun among the other workers. The cook asked if the new guest would be staying permanently. The gardener said he'd seen the boy arrive again after sunset. Even Mina, the most loyal maid after me, looked uncertain. "Maybe Madam is just helping him," she said softly. "But it's strange, isn't it?" I nodded but said nothing. Inside me, two versions of my mistress began to battle. One, the stern woman of integrity I had always respected. The other, a lonely wife seeking comfort in forbidden company. That night, when the lights dimmed and everyone retreated to their rooms, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. I tried convincing myself that it wasn't my concern, that what happened behind Madam's door was none of my business. But the thought wouldn't rest. I kept seeing that boy's pale face, the tremor in his steps. Nina rolled over in her bed and whispered in the dark, "You can defend her all you want, but women like her are dangerous when they're lonely." I didn't reply. My throat was dry, my heart restless. Something inside me whispered that the truth was not what it seemed, and I was determined to find it, even if it shattered everything I believed. The next morning arrived cloaked in uneasy silence. Even the birds outside the courtyard seemed hesitant to sing. As I swept the marble floor, my eyes kept drifting toward Madame's door, half expecting it to open. When it finally did, my breath caught. It was Shumail again. But this time, he looked even worse. His steps were uneven, his skin ashen. He held onto the wall for balance, his lips dry, his eyes half shut as if he hadn't slept in days. He walked past me without a word. I could almost feel the exhaustion radiating from him. When the heavy main door closed behind him, I remained frozen in place, my broom motionless in my hands. What on earth was happening behind that door? Before long, Nina appeared, humming carelessly as she carried a tray of breakfast toward the kitchen. Her eyes sparkled when she noticed my pale face. "So," she said with mock sweetness, "our young guest has survived another night." "Stop it, Nina," I snapped. "This isn't funny." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You can keep pretending all you want, Nita, but everyone knows the truth. Madame's husband has been gone for years. She's lonely, rich, and powerful. What's stopping her from entertaining herself?" Her crude tone made my stomach twist. "You're wrong," I said firmly. "I've worked for her for years. She may be harsh, but she's a woman of dignity." Nina laughed softly, shaking her head. "You'll see soon enough." But even as I defended my mistress, the image of that weak, trembling boy haunted me. If she truly were innocent, why had she locked herself in her room with him all night? Why was he always the one to leave broken? That day, Madame behaved as though nothing unusual had happened. She sat in the living room, reading newspapers and taking calls, perfectly composed. Her calmness confused me even more. I tried to shake off my doubts, focusing on my work, dusting, washing, polishing. But every time I looked at her face, I wondered what secrets it was hiding. Later in the evening, Mina joined me in the kitchen. "You've been quiet all day," she said softly. "Is something wrong?" I hesitated, then whispered, "I think something strange is going on between Madame and that boy." Mina frowned. "You really think so?" "Maybe she's helping him with something." "Don't assume the worst. I wished I could believe that." But my heart was restless. Every time I remembered Shumail's drained face, it gnawed at my peace. I wanted to trust my mistress. I truly did. Yet something inside whispered that the truth was darker. That night, as I lay in bed, Nina's voice echoed in my ears. "Loneliness makes people do things they'd never imagine." I turned on my side, closing my eyes tightly. I told myself I wouldn't think about it anymore. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Something was happening in that house, and sooner or later, I would have to face it. By the following evening, I had convinced myself that perhaps I was overthinking things. Madame had been kind to me for years, and I had no right to suspect her. But that fragile belief shattered the moment I saw another young man standing at the mansion gate. He was taller than Shumail, broader in shoulders, and strikingly handsome. His dark eyes carried a restless confidence, and his olive skin gleamed under the golden lights of the porch. As I approached him, he greeted me politely in Arabic-accented Urdu. "Madame called me," he said calmly, hands folded behind his back. My pulse quickened. "Your name?" I asked. "Yusuf," he replied. "She said I should come tonight." Before I could respond, Madame's voice floated down the hallway, composed and commanding as ever. "Nita, bring him in." I'm waiting. My heart sank. The same pattern, the same time, the same tone. I nodded silently and stepped aside, allowing Yusuf to follow her up the grand staircase. The moment their footsteps faded, the door of Madame's room closed with that familiar click. For several moments, I stood staring at the closed door, feeling a chill crawl down my spine. Then I returned to the servants' quarters, where Nina sat cross-legged on her bed, peeling fruit. When she saw my face, her grin widened. "Let me guess," she said. "Another guest for our Madame?" I didn't answer. I sat on my bed, pressing my hands to my face. "It's not what you think, Nina. There must be another explanation." She laughed quietly, tossing a piece of fruit into her mouth. "You're too innocent, Nita. Look around. Wealth makes people bold. She has everything: money, freedom, power. What she doesn't have is her husband. It's simple." Her words stung, but they also fed the unease I'd been trying to bury. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I might have believed otherwise. But two young men, both leaving at dawn in pain, both arriving at the same hour, how could it be coincidence? That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind replayed every moment. The laughter I'd once heard from Madame's room, the smell of expensive incense lingering in the halls, the flicker of candlelight from her balcony. I told myself I didn't care, that it wasn't my business. But curiosity grew like a fire I couldn't smother. By dawn, Yusuf too was gone. He stumbled out of Madame's room just like Shumail, pale and exhausted. His legs shook, and he leaned on the wall for support. I followed him with my eyes until he disappeared through the front gate. Then I turned toward Nina, who had just entered the hall. Her expression said everything. She had seen it too. "Now do you believe me?" she whispered. "This house hides more than gold and silk, Nita." "It hides sins," I didn't reply. But something inside me shifted. I no longer wanted to defend Madame blindly. I needed to know what was really happening in that locked room. The following night, I could no longer bear the silence. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces of those young men, pale, trembling, drained of all life. My thoughts refused to rest. What if Madame really was doing something terrible? The idea clung to me like smoke, suffocating every other thought. That evening, while Nina folded the freshly washed sheets, she looked at me suspiciously. "You've been quiet since morning," she said. "Still thinking about Madame?" I tried to shrug it off. "It's nothing." But she wasn't convinced. "You want to know the truth, don't you?" she said, smirking. "You'll never find peace until you see it with your own eyes." Her words struck deeper than I expected. By the time night fell, I had made up my mind. I would find out what was really happening inside Madame's room. After everyone fell asleep, I slipped out of the servants' quarters. The corridor was dark, the air heavy with the faint scent of sandalwood. I knew the mansion's layout well, every hallway, every creaking tile. Madame's bedroom had two entrances, the grand front door and a small side entrance that opened to the balcony. I chose the second one. Moving barefoot, I crept along the narrow pathway that led to the balcony. The tiles were cold and the night air stung my skin. From a distance, I could see that the balcony door was closed, but a faint orange glow leaked through the curtains. I crouched closer, pressing my ear gently against the wood. At first, there was silence. Then came a faint sound. A groan, low and pained. My heart began to pound. Another sound followed, not of laughter or whispers, but of something being crushed, ground perhaps. It was rhythmic, steady, like a stone against stone. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. Was this what Nina had been talking about? Or was something else happening, something far beyond our assumptions? I leaned closer, trying to listen. Madame's voice broke through, muffled but clear. She was giving instructions in Arabic, her tone strained. Then came another voice, a young man's, trembling, breathless. My palms grew damp. Every instinct told me to step away, but curiosity pinned me there. For a moment, I imagined opening that door, confronting the truth face to face. But I knew the risk. Madame's temper was fierce. If she caught me spying, she could easily have me deported. After several long minutes, the grinding stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I waited another moment, then quietly slipped back the way I had come, my heart thundering in my chest. When I finally reached the servants' quarters, Nina was fast asleep, her steady breathing filling the small room. I lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling. What was happening in that room wasn't what we thought. I was certain of it now. But what it truly was, I couldn't yet say. I promised myself that the next night I would see it with my own eyes, no matter the risk. The next evening, the mansion seemed quieter than usual. Even the staff moved cautiously, as if the walls themselves were listening. Madame had spent the day in her room speaking to no one. By sunset, I already knew. Tonight, another boy would arrive. My heart beat with both dread and determination. When night fell and the mansion lights dimmed, I pretended to stay behind for extra cleaning. Nina noticed the tension in my face but said nothing. I waited until the halls fell silent, then moved quickly toward Madame's room. My palms were cold and sweaty. This time, I didn't stop at the balcony bus. I went inside. The door to her room was unlocked. I slipped quietly into the wide chamber, hiding inside a large wooden wardrobe near the wall. The scent of expensive perfume filled the air, mixed with something sharp and herbal. I left a small gap in the door so I could see the bed and part of the floor. Minutes later, I heard footsteps, soft, measured. Madame entered the room, dressed in her long silk gown. Behind her was a young man no older than 20. He looked nervous but obedient. The door closed with a soft thud, and the room fell into dim light as Madame lit a small lamp beside her bed. "Come," she said gently. The boy hesitated. "Madame, what do you want me to do?" Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. "I only need your strength." From the cupboard, I could see her turning away, slowly removing her shawl. The light fell on her back, and my breath caught in my throat. Her skin was covered in bruises and long red marks that looked raw and painful. Some were deep, like wounds that refused to heal. She lay face down on the bed, clutching the sheets. "The herbs," she whispered. "Crush them and apply them here." The boy nodded, though his face showed fear. He moved to the corner where a mortar and pestle rested on a small table. As he began grinding the mixture, the rhythmic sound I had heard the night before returned. The same haunting rhythm of stone against stone. When he rubbed the paste onto her wounds, Madame gasped in pain, her voice echoing through the room. I froze, unable to move. It wasn't lust or sin that filled the air, but it was suffering. Her cries weren't of pleasure, but of torment. The boy worked all night, tirelessly applying the herbal mixture, sweat glistening on his forehead. By dawn, his hands trembled with exhaustion. Madame sat up weakly and gave him a small pouch of money. "Thank you," she whispered. "You may go." He bowed and limped out of the room, barely able to walk. When the door closed, Madame sat in silence, her head bowed. A single tear rolled down her cheek before she blew out the lamp. From my hiding place, I felt my own tears burn. The truth had shattered me. I had judged her so wrongly. Morning light crept slowly into the mansion, painting the marble floors gold. My hands trembled as I scrubbed the dining table, every nerve in my body still echoing with the horror of what I'd witnessed. The sound of Madame's trembling hands, the sight of those deep scars. They replayed in my mind over and over. I hadn't slept. The guilt of spying on her gnawed at me, but another fear gripped me tighter. Had she seen me? I was polishing a glass when her voice came from behind, calm, too calm. "Nita." My body froze. I turned slowly to find her standing at the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Come to my room," she said. I followed her through the quiet corridors. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of dread. When I entered her room, the scent of herbs was still heavy in the air. The boy was gone, the bed neatly made, but the traces of pain lingered everywhere, a blood-stained cloth on the table, a cracked bowl near the chair. She motioned for me to sit. I obeyed, my heart pounding so loudly I feared she could hear it. "You were in my room last night," she said simply. My throat went dry. "Madam, she raised her hand gently. "Don't lie, Nita." I know I lowered my head, ashamed. "Forgive me," I whispered. I didn't mean to intrude. I only wanted to understand what was happening. People were talking. I thought that I was immoral." She finished softly. I didn't respond. Tears pricked my eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a deep sigh, she spoke, her voice stripped of all its usual pride. "You think I bring young men here for pleasure. But the truth, Nita, is that I bring them here to survive." I looked up, startled. She turned her back toward me, lifting her silk robe slightly, revealing the network of wounds and scars that crossed her skin like a map of suffering. "My husband did this," she said, her voice trembling but controlled. "He is a powerful man, feared by many. When his temper rises, he beats me until I bleed. Then he leaves for months, traveling with other women, drinking, gambling, while I stay here pretending to be the perfect wife in a perfect home." My lips parted, but no words came. "These young men," she continued, "I pay them to prepare herbal medicine for my wounds. They grind the roots and leaves that restore my skin. It takes strength, more than I have, so I hire them. I cannot let the world know what he does to me. My friends believe I live a happy life. I cannot lose that illusion. I need to keep my dignity, even if it is built on lies. Tears streamed down her face, and I could no longer hold back mine. "Do you understand now?" she whispered. I nodded slowly, my heart aching. "Yes, madam." "I do." In that moment, the image I had built of her, proud, cold, unfeeling, collapsed completely. She wasn't wicked. She was broken, yet still standing. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Madame stood near the window, her back turned to me, the sunlight falling softly on the bruises that her robe could not hide. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but steady. "You see, Nita, people look at me and see privilege. They see a mansion, fine clothes, servants, and beauty. But they don't see the chains I live with." She paused, turning slowly toward me. "My husband made me his second wife when I was only 23. I thought it was love. I thought I was special. But I became nothing more than his possession. A thing to display when he pleased, and to punish when he didn't." Her words pierced me like blades. I had always imagined her life as one of ease, while mine was struggle. But now I saw that suffering wore many faces, sometimes hidden behind silk and gold. She sat down heavily, her shoulders slumping. "He comes here once every few months. When he's angry, he beats me. When he's bored, he leaves. I am not allowed to divorce him, not allowed to speak of this pain. I can't tell my family or my friends. They all believe I'm blessed." She smiled faintly, a smile that broke my heart. Blessed. Such a strange word, isn't it? I nodded, unable to speak. She continued, her voice trembling. "When he's gone, I try to heal myself. But the wounds are deep. Not just on my body, but in my soul. That is why I bring those boys. They grind the herbs, they help me with the medicines, nothing more. I pay them well so they can go home safe and never speak of it." Her eyes met mine. "Now that you know, you must promise me something, Nita." I swallowed hard. "Anything, madam." "You must tell no one. Not Nina, not the other servants, not even your family. If this truth spreads, it will destroy me. My husband is a dangerous man. If he suspects I've spoken, he will kill me. And perhaps even you." The gravity of her words made my skin crawl. I looked at her, Basama. This woman I had once feared, now standing before me, fragile yet dignified. And I knew I couldn't betray her. "I promise," I said quietly. "Your secret is safe with me." She exhaled deeply, relief softening her face. "Thank you, Nita. I knew I could trust you. You remind me of the woman I used to be. Strong, loyal, full of faith." I lowered my gaze, my chest tightening. In her pain, I saw reflections of my own. A husband who never truly cared. A life built on sacrifices for people who hardly noticed them. As I left her room, I realized we were not so different. We were both women trying to hold our worlds together with trembling hands, protecting illusions of happiness while hiding the truth beneath layers of silence. That night, as I lay awake, one question echoed in my heart. How many women are living like us, smiling for the world while quietly bleeding inside? Days passed, but the mansion no longer felt the same. Every time I saw Madame walking through the hallways, elegant yet weary, I saw the hidden pain behind her calm face. I treated her wounds with even more care now, polishing her room, bringing her tea, making sure no one questioned her private hours. Nina still whispered her suspicions, but I never responded. Some truths, I realized, were too heavy to be spoken. At night, when I lay in the servant quarters, I thought about my own life, the husband who had abandoned me emotionally, the children waiting for the money I sent home. Like Madame, I too lived behind an image, a strong woman who endured everything silently. Perhaps all women, in one way or another, learn to suffer with grace, to hide their scars behind smiles. One evening, Madame called me again. Her tone was gentle this time. "Nita," she said softly, "thank you for keeping my dignity alive." I looked into her tired eyes and saw something I hadn't before: peace. Not happiness, but acceptance. As I left her room, I realized that life rarely offers justice to women like us. It only offers endurance. We mend our wounds in silence and still find strength to care for others. Now, when I think of Madame, I don't see arrogance or sin. I see a woman surviving the cruelty of love, the violence of expectations. And sometimes I ask myself, is silence truly loyalty? Or is it just another form of pain we've learned to bear? That question still lingers in my heart and unanswered, but painfully true.